This week moved faster than I expected, not because we rushed it, but because every city came with layers, movements inside movements, streets that didn't bother resetting between stops. It felt like one long inhale, one gorgeous, confusing, overly scenic inhale, and the rhythm? Totally out of sync, in the best way. Some cities sped me up. Others pulled the brakes so hard I nearly tipped over my own expectations. By midweek, I gave up trying to track it. I just let the days happen, like chapters I hadn't written yet but somehow already starred in. The quizzes? They don't live here. They live inside the cities, back where you felt the cobblestones under your feet or stared at a fresco too long and forgot what century you were in. This is just the in-between breath, the trace left on your clothes when the city's gone quiet, the espresso-stained summary, the playlist of glances, missteps, and that one pigeon that followed me through 3 piazzas like we had unresolved business. So here we are. Italy, week 2. No conclusions, just impressions. Still messy, still unfolding, still moving, and somehow still exactly where I need to be.
Welcome to Rome. If you trip over a stone here, it's probably older than your country. Rome isn't one era, it's several thousand years all talking at once. Ancient ambition, Renaissance excess, modern life squeezed into spaces that were never meant to hold it. You arrive thinking you're here to see Rome, then it keeps showing you how much of it there is. I can't believe I'm finally here. You grow up reading about this place, seeing it in textbooks and films, but standing in front of it, it's overwhelming. For a second, you just stop. You don't even start with facts. You just stand there trying to take in that it's real. This was an arena built for spectacle, and for stakes that were absolute. Gladiators fought knowing an emperor's thumb could decide whether they lived or died. Exotic animals were hauled in from across the empire, hunts were staged, executions were public. At times, the arena was even flooded so ships could battle in front of a roaring crowd. And I keep picturing Sarah in those stands 2,000 years ago, cheering one minute, outraged the next, trying to free every animal in the place, and somehow still arguing that she's just being reasonable. Beneath the sand was a hidden network of corridors, lifts, pulleys, and trapdoors. Fighters didn't enter like performers. They emerged without warning. Animals appeared, vanished, then reappeared somewhere else entirely. The spectacle was the point. The engineering ran like a well-oiled machine.
Joe, for the record, if I'd been in that crowd, I would have been an absolute delight. Loud, yes. Passionate, yes. Morally impeccable. Obviously. Now, back to me. One minute I was weaving through traffic and takeaway shops, and the next I turned a corner and history ambushed me. The Roman Forum, columns rising from rubble, platforms that once held speeches, accusations, alliances. You don't look at the Forum, you look through it. Layers on layers of ambition and aftermath. This was the beating heart of ancient Rome. Not a museum, but a megaphone. The Senate debated here. Trials, processions, celebrations, assassinations, they all passed through these stones. But what struck me wasn't one building. It was the proximity of everything. Political power right next to sacred temples, open plazas spilling into tight corridors, every stone fighting for space and legacy. I kept stopping mid-sentence because every direction had a new argument to make. Joe would have been impossible to stop here. Give him a podium and a toga, and I guarantee we'd still be waiting for him to finish his closing statement.
The Pantheon began as a pagan temple and later became a church, and remarkably, the structure itself barely needed altering. You walk in, and your eyes go straight up. The dome above you was the largest of its kind when it was built, a concrete span that no one else at the time had managed to achieve. At the center of the ceiling is an aperture open to the sky. When it rains, rainwater falls straight through and hits the stone floor below, and it never floods. The floor slopes just enough to guide the water away through hidden drains. What's incredible is that even now, this engineering still hasn't been bettered. No explanation, no visible solution, just confidence, precision, and time, proving them right.
I found the Trevi Fountain by accident. One moment I was in a quiet street thinking about gelato. The next I was standing in front of a Baroque waterfall exploding out of a palace. It's not subtle. It doesn't try to be. White marble, wild horses, ocean gods bursting through architecture like they've got somewhere to be. And the water? It's constant. Crashing, pulsing, over the top and unapologetic. Getting close required strategy, elbows, and a refusal to say, sorry. And honestly, when in Rome. I tossed a coin over my shoulder with full theatrical flair and made a wish. You toss the coin and decide to believe in something for a second. Joe briefly considered testing the water depth. Rome shut that down immediately, probably for the best.
You know you're near Vatican City long before you pass through its gates. The walls aren't decorative. They're deliberate. Towering, unbroken, indifferent to your curiosity. They weren't built to invite you in. They were built to declare what lies inside matters enough to be protected, and so you follow them. Not just because you're heading to the smallest country in the world, but because you're approaching one of the most symbolically loaded spaces on the planet. Then suddenly, the gates open, and the silence lifts. St. Peter's Square unfolds like a stage, arms wide, colonnades sweeping around you in a precise embrace. Designed by Bernini, those columns were meant to symbolize the welcoming arms of the church, geometry with purpose. Beneath you, archives older than nations, vaults of letters, treaties, maps, the memory banks of an institution that's been influencing global events for nearly 2 millennia, geometry with purpose. And somewhere in these walls, a man in white still writes encyclicals that ripple out across continents. The Swiss Guard are here too, ceremonial, colorful, and deeply trained. Their loyalty is not to a land, but to a person. Since 1506, they've stood ready to defend the papacy itself. Everything here speaks, not with volume, but with certainty. And whether you're devout, doubting, or just dazzled, you feel the weight of history pressing in from every marble inch.
St. Peter's Basilica isn't just big, it's vast. You walk in and suddenly everyone's quieter. Not because they have to be, but because their sense of scale just got realigned. Domes that stretch toward heaven, statues the size of trees, marble that somehow feels soft to the touch. This is the spiritual epicenter of Catholicism, built over what's believed to be St. Peter's burial site. Every inch is designed to humble you, and it works. People move slowly here. Half reverence, half overwhelm. You take it in piece by piece. Michelangelo's Pietà in a quiet corner, light filtering through impossible heights, inscriptions that don't need translating. You step outside blinking, thinking you've seen it. Then you turn around and go back in.
The Sistine Chapel is so famous you expect it to be enormous. It isn't. Originally built as a papal chapel, it was never designed as a gallery. And yet it houses one of the most famous frescoes in the world. Michelangelo's ceiling unfolds scene by scene, the creation of Adam, prophets and sibyls, bodies twisted in motion, muscles under strain. At the far end, the Last Judgment pulls the entire room toward it. Creation, fall, salvation, the whole story plays out above your head. You tilt your neck back and follow it. Your neck complains. You ignore it.
By the time we sat down to eat, I was starving. Not polite hungry, ravenous. Rome doesn't flirt with food, it commits. We ordered pasta that arrived with a thud. Thick, creamy, completely indifferent to calorie counts. Bread, automatic. Wine, immediate. Flavor, assertive. Like it's been doing this since Empire days. Roman cooking doesn't pose. It provides. It's confident, grounded, and designed for people who actually eat. After a day of ruins, domes, and debates, food here feels like a reset button. You chew, you breathe, you return to yourself. Rome makes sense at a table.
Centro Storico di Napoli. Welcome to Naples, folks, one of Europe's oldest, most vibrant city centers. This isn't postcard Italy. This is Italy at full volume. Chaotic, expressive, deeply proud, and intensely human. I step out, and whoa! I'm immediately plastered against a wall as a Fiat zips past. With a scooter tailgating so close, I feel the air whoosh. Overhead, laundry like bunting, shirts, sheets, towels strung proudly like family flags. The streets are stone, smoothed by centuries of use. Doorways repeat like verses in a song. And trying to find a straight path? Good luck. You follow the rhythm, not the map. Spaccanapoli. It cuts straight through the old city. It follows one of the main Roman streets. An east-west route, what they called a decumanus. It's not just a street, it's a funnel. Roman foundations underfoot, Modern life stacked on top. Shops, churches, chaos. It all spills into the street like it couldn't bear to stay indoors. I grab a folded pizza, piping hot, cheese almost too bold to stay inside the crust. I take it and keep moving because two scooters are already trying to get past me. Naples doesn't wait. As Sarah said, if this city had an inside voice, it missed the memo. Then, bam! A gap in the buildings, and there it is. Mount Vesuvius. Silent. Still. Watching. It looms, not as myth, but as memory. The last eruption was 1944. That's recent enough that people here grew up with stories about it. They talk about grandparents who remember ash. And under that volcano, life continues. Coffee, arguing, laughter, echoes of life, business as usual. And just a short ride away, there is Pompeii. Silence. Wide streets. Echoes of life. It's not ruins, it's a town stopped mid-use. Kitchens, beds, streets with stepping stones. The eruption in 79 AD buried the city so quickly that it froze daily life where it stood. That's what makes it unsettling and fascinating. I'm not imagining the past, I'm walking through it. I stand in rooms where people cooked, slept, worked. It isn't abstract history, it's interruption made visible. Back to Naples. The sound returns like a wall. Pompeii paused. Naples didn't. Continuity isn't a tagline. It's lived. It's shouted, it's eaten hot and on the move. Down by the seaside, there is Castel dell'Ovo. Did you know? The name means egg castle, but this place is no yoke. Sea in front, city behind. If you imagine this coast centuries ago, Greek settlers first, then Romans, this outcrop makes immediate sense. If ships coming in would have been visible long before they reached land, this was where you watched the horizon and hoped the sails you saw were friendly. You feel why it mattered. No need for a plaque. Ah yes, Naples is the birthplace of pizza. Thin in the middle, charred at the edge, too hot to hold. Fold it or lose it. Tomato, mozzarella, steam, smoke. And the flavor that makes you understand why the whole planet copied it. Naples doesn't dine, it devours. Food stalls fight for inches of sidewalk, each one with its loyalists. Recipes handed down like sacred scrolls. Pizza, a portfolio, folded and handed to you like a hot envelope. Fried pizza, rich, dripping, delicious. Arancini, crispy outside, molten heart. Sfogliatella, flaky, buttery, gone in 2 bites. Food isn't plated, it's deployed. Sarah tried sitting down once. Felt like I was blocking traffic, she said. All right.
You don't walk the Amalfi Coast. You perch, you pause, you pose like you're in a perfume ad, then immediately trip on a lemon. Because this place doesn't invite you in. It seduces you, then politely reminds you it's built entirely on stairs. And yes, Joe brought a sun hat so wide it nearly cleared a balcony. He called it a metaphor for coastal expansion. I called it blocking my view. Amalfi, the town, feels busy in a very specific way. Boats coming in, people funneling out. The Duomo di Amalfi sits right there, unapologetically dramatic. Inside, it cools down fast. Stone, shadow, and that sudden quiet that makes you feel the hush. Then there's the Cloister of Paradise, tucked beside it. White columns, palm trees, a strange calm considering how chaotic the piazza is just meters away. It feels like a pause the town built for itself. Jagged cliffs folding into sea, towns stacked like bakery boxes, boat wakes ribboning through turquoise, plates of pasta glinting with lemon zest, and Joe carefully sipping espresso like it's sacred. Which, here it kind of is. Here doing nothing is the goal, and it's done very, very well. You don't tick sights off. You let them wash over you. The view is the attraction. The stairs are the price of admission. There are no short walks, only scenic ascents, no light lunch, just lemon-scented life coaching, no rush, just rhythm. It's not Italy's history, it's Italy's fantasy. And Joe? Pretending he doesn't love it. He does. He just sighs louder than the sea. Positano is the postcard. The beaches sit right at the bottom, dark sand and umbrellas packed tight. Houses stacked straight down the cliff like they slid there and stayed. Fashion boutiques, cafes, restaurants everywhere. There's honeymoon energy here, anniversary energy, I'm never leaving energy, until you can't look at another staircase. And if you're brave enough to keep climbing, and I mean higher than Joe's espresso bill, you'll eventually reach Ravello. It's perched above the coast like it's judging the rest of Italy for being too mainstream. Here the air gets quieter, the views get wider, and the crowds thin out like they've been politely turned away by a very classy doorman. 2 names to whisper with reverence: Villa Ruffalo, where gardens float above the sea and Wagner once caught feelings; Villa Cimbrone, home to the Terrace of Infinity, where even cynics consider writing poetry. Ravello doesn't chase your attention. It waits, because it knows it already has you. And yes, Joe did try to lean dramatically on a railing and almost dropped his camera into the clouds. Very poetic. Very almost expensive. Priano feels different. Less arrival, more living. The pace drops. The light hangs around longer in the evening. Sunsets matter here. It's quieter than Positano, less staged, more local. The kind of place where dinner starts late, because that's how it works. Now let's talk lemons. This coast practically worships the sfusato amalfitano. They're huge, they're fragrant, and they show up in everything: limoncello, desserts, pasta sauces, even fish dishes. Joe tried limoncello twice, called it sunshine with a warning label. 10 minutes later, he tried to philosophize with a sea urchin. I have the footage. And the seafood? Anchovies, clams, mussels, grilled fish, simply kissed by salt and sea. Because here, the rule is, don't interfere. Respect the ingredients. This isn't a party coast. It's not a checklist holiday. It's where you honeymoon with your own peace, where time drips like olive oil, and everything tastes like permission to pause. And just when you think the coast has offered up all its drama, a boat shows up. Destination? Capri. It's what happens when glamour and geology have a love child. You don't just arrive here, you make an entrance. White villas cling to cliffs. Bougainvillea explodes like it missed the memo on moderation. And Joe? Joe had a brief romance with a lemon granita and declared it the most honest relationship of my life. So apparently we have something to talk about. But Capri isn't just cute, it's complicated. Then there's the Grotta Azzurra, the Blue Grotto. A sea cave that glows electric blue when the light hits just right. You lie back in a tiny boat and let it happen. Part cave, part magical glitch in the Matrix. There's Via Krupp, connecting the Gardens of Augustus to Marina Piccola. This scenic, rock-carved path is a major, iconic landmark offering breathtaking views of the Faraglioni. And the coastline, the Faraglioni, rise straight out of the sea. Massive stone stacks you circle slowly, pretending you're not impressed. There's the Piazzetta, where espresso costs a small inheritance, but the people watching is Michelin-starred. Capri is the Amalfi Coast turned up to 11. Its beauty edited with a glam filter. Yes, I had to physically drag Joe away from a $280 linen shirt. He's still whispering about the buttons. You haven't truly experienced Capri until you've overheard a breakup, a fashion pitch, and a cappuccino critique, all on the same terrace. And while we were there, Joe insisted on hiking to the top of Monte Solaro for the view. 10 minutes in, he renamed it the Stairmaster of Suffering and offered to pay someone to carry him down like a Greek statue.
All right, thinking caps on. Let me ask you this. What place in Italy was once so backwards the government called it a national disgrace? But today it's protected by UNESCO and swarmed by architecture students in wide-brimmed hats. Nope, it's not the plot of a Netflix documentary. It's real, and it's tucked deep in the Mezzogiorno, southern Italy's unsung interior. Less limoncello, more limestone. Let's go. Now, Mezzogiorno literally means midday, but it's really a poetic way of saying southern Italy. The sun shines, yes, but this isn't about beaches and fashion weeks. This is the inland story. The Apennines run down Italy like a spine, and everything they touch turns dramatic. Deep valleys, sharp cliffs, towns perched like chess pieces on hilltops. You won't find souvenir shops every 5 feet. You will find stone streets, family recipes without measurements, and a kind of silence that makes you lower your voice out of respect. Let's start in Basilicata. Remote, mountainous, and suspiciously quiet. Kinda like Sarah before she wins at trivia. Which is often, but I still act surprised. Here lies Matera, a city carved straight into stone. These cave homes, called the Sassi, were lived in well into the 1950s. No plumbing, no electricity, no modern comforts. The government took one look and said, nope, shut it down. They moved everyone out and sealed it off. But here comes the twist. Those caves weren't just holes in the wall. They were brilliantly engineered: natural insulation, rainwater harvesting, passive cooling. In 1993, UNESCO stepped in and said, actually, this is amazing. Matera went from embarrassment to architectural envy, from shame to fame. And yes, now there's a boutique hotel where someone's chicken coop used to be. That's gentrification for you. Next up, Apulia, and not the coastal part with beach clubs and sunburns. We're heading inland to the Itria Valley. Think olive trees older than your ancestors, dry stone walls that zigzag for miles, and masserias, fortified farmhouses that look like they were designed by introverts with great taste. Then there's Alberobello, where the houses wear sharp party hats. Okay, not really, but close. The Trulli are round, whitewashed homes with conical roofs, built with no mortar. Why? So they could be taken down fast to dodge feudal taxes. Imagine your landlord knocking, and you just take your house apart. Iconic. Today, Trulli are UNESCO certified. Back then, they were loophole living at its finest. Slide over to Calabria, where the land gets wild, and the locals get stubborn in the best way. The Aspromonte and Sila National Parks are full of forests, ravines, and trails where even Google Maps says, good luck. Historically, these mountains were hideouts for rebels, shepherds, and folks who didn't want to be found. That's why Calabria's dialects are unique, the food's fiercely local, and traditions, well, let's just say, change arrives fashionably late. Let's talk Campania, yes, where Naples is, but go inland, and you hit what used to be called Campania Felix, the happy countryside. Why so happy? Volcanic soil. Vesuvius may throw tantrums, but in between eruptions, it makes everything grow. Grapes, grains, and veggies that practically leap out of the dirt. And then, Sicily. Not the coast, the interior. Here, Mount Etna looms like a fire-breathing landlord. It erupts, it fertilizes, it demands rebuilding. And people do, again and again. Vineyards climb lava slopes, villages rebuild over ash, and they keep making wine like it's nothing. Oh, and fun fact, Sicily's where the mafia started. Yep, Cosa Nostra was born in the 1800s in these inland zones, partly to protect locals when the law was, shall we say, out to lunch. So what ties all these places together? Architecture that thinks ahead, food that wastes nothing, and tourism? Optional. Which means if you go, you're not a customer, you're a guest.
All right, Sardinia. It's politically Italian, but the minute you get here, you can feel it. This island does not behave like a side dish. Welcome to Sardinia, where the beaches look like the Caribbean, the interior looks like it's testing your cardio levels. And Joe? He just asked if a beach club here takes loyalty cards. I watched him say it with his whole chest, too, like he was asking a serious civic question. Granite mountains that look like they've been left out in the sun too long. Water so clear you start checking your makeup. Old stone towns that are still lived in, not preserved. And beaches that make you briefly consider becoming one of those people who accidentally misses your flight home. Sardinia isn't one mood. It's a whole identity argument. Billionaire yachts in the north, parked like they own the sea. Cliff-hugging ruins in the south, hanging on in places you wouldn't put a chair. And wild, windy coastlines where you stop talking because the space doesn't need your commentary. Up north? That's where the glam lives. Costa Smeralda. The Emerald Coast. Emerald, like the water. Or the credit limit needed to dock your boat in Porto Cervo. Porto Cervo is all designer boutiques, manicured marinas, and Joe mistaking a $12 espresso for an investment in atmosphere. And it's not just the price, it's the performance of it. The tiny cup, the tiny spoon, the tiny sip. The way you're meant to look like you've always paid €12 to be lightly caffeinated. Beaches like Spiaggia del Principe and Capriccioli aren't just scenic, they're curated. Like nature had a stylist. And yes, they're beautiful. But it's a specific kind of beautiful. Even the rocks look arranged. Even the sun feels like it arrived on schedule. Now slide over to Alghero. Same island, completely different vibe. This one's got medieval walls, Catalan whispers in the architecture, and seafood so fresh it still has opinions. You can feel the shift in your shoulders. People are actually living here. Kids running, old men planted on corners, laundry doing what laundry does. It's not trying to be polished. It just is. It's lively, it's local, and it's where Joe tried to impress a waiter by pronouncing Neptune's grotto in his romantic voice. It backfired, like immediate regret. The waiter blinked twice, then offered him bread with the kind of patience you reserve for a well-meaning tourist. That grotto, though? Unreal. A dramatic sea cave carved right into the cliffs, so vast and cleanly shaped it looks engineered until you remember it's just water and time showing off. Accessible by boat or by cliff staircase cardio. Joe chose the stairs. Regretted it by step 6. He called it worth it around step 12. By step 20, all conversation ceased, and he was negotiating terms for me to carry him, or tie a rope to him and pull.